Welcome, traveler of the night, dear friend of quiet hours. You are welcome to the Sleeping History Channel. You found your way back to this quiet corner of the world where history drifts softly, like falling snow, and where the past feels close enough to breathe in. Before we begin tonight's journey, take a moment just for yourself. Settle in. Let your shoulders loosen. Let your eyelids feel a little heavier. And let whatever you carried through the day slowly fade to the edges. If you can, dim the lights around you. Maybe turn on a gentle fan for that soft, steady hum. Or let the night breeze find its way to you. Wherever you are, pull a blanket close. Feel the weight of it against your body. And take a slow, deep breath in. And exhale. Tonight, we're stepping into a world that most of us would never survive. A world colder, harsher, darker, and far more dangerous than anything we imagine when we picture the romance of knights, castles, and medieval life. Because the truth is simple and brutal. You wouldn't last a single day in a real medieval winter. Forget the warm fires and cheerful feasts shown in movies. Forget the polished armor, the cozy taverns, the glowing hearths. The real winter of the Middle Ages was a season of hunger, of sickness, of smoke-filled rooms, frozen water buckets, aching limbs, constant fear. A season that tested every breath you took, and sometimes took your breath away forever. But tonight, you're not just watching. You're not standing at a safe distance. You're going to live it. Before we step through that door, a gentle invitation. If calm, immersive journeys like this help you find rest or peace, or simply something soothing to fall asleep to, feel free to like this video and subscribe in your own time. No hurry, no pressure. Just join our quiet little community when you're ready. I would love to know truly where in the world you're listening from tonight and what time it is for you. It always amazes me how this sleepy little corner somehow brings together people from everywhere. Now, close your eyes if you want, slow your breathing, and step with me into a different century. Congratulations, you've just woken up in the winter of the year 1347, deep in the medieval world, at the very moment when the cold ruled every life. The light? You're alive. You made it through the night. The shadow? Well, the cold made it through the night too. And it's waiting for you. So let's dive in. You wake up. Because the cold wakes you. Not gently, not like the mornings you know, but with a bite. The kind that creeps into your bones long before your mind understands what's happening. Your eyes blink open, slowly unsure if it's dawn or still night. The room is dim, illuminated only by the faintest gray glow slipping through a tiny shuttered window. You lie on a straw mattress, if it can even be called that, uneven, scratchy, with the faint smell of mold and old hay. Your first breath creates a soft cloud of mist in the air. You see it hover in front of your face, a quiet reminder that the temperature inside your home is barely different from the temperature outside. You pull the thin woolen blanket closer around your shoulders, but it doesn't help. Nothing really helps. The cold here isn't just around you, it lives with you. It lives on you. You stretch your legs, and the stiff fabric of your only pair of winter stockings cracks slightly at the knees. There's frost on the inside of the window, on the wooden beams, even on the edges of your blanket. You shiver, not from surprise, but from routine. This is how every winter morning begins. Beside you, several bodies are pressed close. Family, piled together like a cluster of exhausted animals trying to share warmth. You hear soft breathing, a cough from someone, and the faintest whine of wind slipping through gaps in the walls. You sit up slowly, because sudden movement makes the cold feel sharper. Your back aches, not because you're old, though at 30, people already call you aged. The ache comes from years of sleeping on straw, years of bending, hauling, chopping, carrying. You rub your hands together. They're rough, cracked, the kind of cracks that turn white at the edges from the cold. You blow into your palms, but even your breath is too thin to warm them. A smell fills the room, not one smell, but many layered together. Damp wool, old smoke, sweat that never truly washed away, the faint sourness of stale air, and beneath it all, the earthy scent of animals because yes, animals live inside with you. A goat in the corner, maybe a few chickens tucked in a wooden crate. Their warmth is valuable, too valuable to leave outside where they'd freeze or be taken by wolves. You shuffle toward the hearth, really just a small stone pit in the center of the room. Last night's fire is nothing but cold gray ash. If you want warmth today, even a little, you'll need to coax a flame back to life. Your breath trembles as you blow on the ashes. Nothing. Your fingers fumble with the flint. Still nothing. You try again, slower this time, steady, patient. Because impatience wastes energy you can't afford. A spark catches. A thin, weak flame flickers to life. You lean close, cupping it with both hands. It sputters, but holds, a tiny victory, tiny relief. Warmth you will cling to for the next few minutes. Behind you, someone stirs under the blankets. Another cough, wetter this time, rings through the room. Winter sickness is growing. It always grows. Your stomach growls. You don't expect much for breakfast. Maybe a piece of hard bread from yesterday. Maybe a thin pottage, a watery mixture of barley and last year's peas. Hunger isn't an emergency here. It's an everyday rhythm. Outside a rooster crows, faintly muffled by snow. The sound is enough to remind you that the day has truly begun. You step out into the morning cold. Your breath turns to fog. The ground beneath your feet feels like stone, frozen soil, frozen mud, frozen life. The wind nips at your face and the sky is a dull, heavy gray. You sniff the air. Wood smoke. Winter air has a smell that is both sharp and empty. This is your morning. This is the first hour of your medieval winter day. And the cold, it's only getting started. The cold outside hits you harder than you expect, even though you expected it. That's the way medieval winter works. No matter how many mornings you survive, each one steals your breath for just a second. You stand in the doorway of your home, your single-room hut, really, and you take your first real look at the world. Everything is quiet. Not peaceful quiet, but the kind of quiet that feels like the earth is holding its breath. Snow dusts the rooftops. Frost clings to every twig, every corner of every fence, sparkling faintly in the weak gray morning. A thin mist hangs low, hugging the ground, curling around your ankles. You exhale slowly, watching your breath drift into the silence like a little ghost. For a moment it just hangs there, suspended in the air. Before dissolving dot, your fingers already feel numb. The cracked skin along your knuckles stings, sharp, biting, like tiny needles. You tuck your hands under your arms, holding them tight against your ribs, trying to push warmth back into them. You glance toward the barn, a small wooden shed leaning a little to one side. Its door creaks gently in the wind. Inside, your animals wait, the few you have left. A thin cow, her ribs visible beneath her shaggy winter coat. A couple of goats, perhaps a half-dozen chickens. You step toward the barn, boots crunching in the stiff frost. And as you open the door, a wave of warm, animal-scented air brushes your face, thick, musky, but soft compared to the winter outside. You pause there in the doorway, appreciating the contrast, the warmth, the life. The cow lifts her head slowly, eyes dull with hunger. She gives a low, weak moo, almost apologetic. You pat her neck gently, feeling the coarse hair graze your palm. You don't have much to feed them. Winter never leaves much. Whatever hay you stored in the autumn has dwindled into a pitiful stack. You scoop a small armful, too little, you know, but it's all you can spare, and spread it out across the rough wooden floor. The animals eat quietly, not eagerly, just steadily. They're tired too. You run a hand down the cow's flank. She feels thinner than she should. You worry, not loudly, not dramatically, but in a deep, quiet place inside your chest, that she might not make it to spring. And if she doesn't, well, you don't let yourself finish that thought knot. Now, you move on, sweeping out the barn with a wooden broom. Dust, old straw, frozen manure. Your breath comes out in short white puffs as you work. When you finish, you return to your home. Inside, the tiny fire in the hearth has grown into a small but steady glow. The room is still cold, unbearably cold, but the faint warmth feels like a miracle dot. Your family is waking now. You hear a shuffle, a cough, a sniffle. Someone murmurs sleepily. You kneel by the fire and set a small clay pot over it. Water fills the bottom, or what you hope is water. Sometimes the well freezes. Sometimes you drink melted snow. Today you manage to break through the ice on the bucket outside, and that's a small blessing. You toss in a handful of barley grains, not enough to make a real meal, but enough to warm the belly. Someone hands you a chunk of yesterday's bread, hard as a stone. You soak it in the pot, waiting for it to soften. Behind you, the room fills with sound. Low voices, quiet grumbling, the stretching of stiff limbs, the rustle of blankets. The cold makes everyone move slower. It makes children whine softly, and elders groan at the ache in their joints. You stir the pottage. Slow circles. The steam curls upward, brushing your face with soft warmth. For a few seconds, you just breathe it in, eyes closed, letting that little bit of heat touch your cheeks. Breakfast is ready. Barely. It's thin, watery, and not nearly enough, but everyone gathers around. You pass bowls one by one. No one complains. No one ever complains in winter. Complaints take energy, and energy is something no one wastes. You take your first bite, and the warmth spreads through you, mild, faint, but real. Then, as you eat, you notice something out of the corner of your eye. The window shutter rattles. The wind picks up. A fresh wave of snow begins to fall, thick, slow flakes drifting gently from the pale sky. Another reminder, winter hasn't even shown its worst yet. You sip your pottage and swallow hard. This is life. This is survival. This is your morning ritual in the medieval world. Cold, hunger, routine, resilience. You stand up, wiping your hands, preparing to start your day, the real work, the dangerous work. But even now, something inside you hesitates. Because in winter, every moment, even this quiet breakfast, feels like a small battle won. And the next battle is waiting. Always waiting, just outside the door. You step back outside, and the cold feels sharper now. Not just on your skin, but somewhere deeper, inside your ribs, inside your thoughts. The weak winter sun has edged a little higher, but it doesn't give warmth so much as light, a pale, watery glow that makes everything look washed out. The fields you worked in all summer are hidden beneath a crust of snow and ice, silent and still. You know every ridge, every furrow, every stone under that white blanket. But right now, the land feels like it belongs to someone else. You hug your cloak tighter, pull your cap down over your ears, and walk toward the small barn. Your boots crunch on frozen mud, then slide lightly where ice has formed, so you keep your steps careful, deliberate. You can't afford a twisted ankle. Not here, not now. In winter, even a small injury is dangerous. Inside the barn, the air is warmer, but only just. It's also thick with smells. Damp straw, animal breath, old manure, dry dust that never quite settles. Your cow lifts her head when you enter, big dark eyes following you, hot air puffing from her nostrils in soft little clouds that drift in the chilled gloom. She looks thinner than she did in summer. Her ribs show more clearly now, her coat rougher, less glossy. You feel a twinge in your chest, a deep, slow ache that isn't from the cold. You know she is your family's lifeline, milk in the warmer months, a calf if you're lucky, maybe meat one day if things get truly desperate. You spread a small armful of hay before her, not as much as she'd like, not as much as you'd like to give. You can't be generous. Winter doesn't allow generosity. Winter demands rationing, careful hands, tight decisions. You run your fingers along her neck, feeling the warmth there, the steady rhythm of a living body. You whisper something under your breath, a small comfort. Maybe a prayer, maybe just a habit. She can't answer, but her head leans gently into your hand, and for one quiet moment, you feel less alone. The chickens scratch half-heartedly at the frozen dirt in their corner. Their combs look a little pale, a little shrunken. They are still laying now and then, but not often. An egg in winter is like treasure, the kind you don't eat quickly, the kind you talk about before you crack it, as if saying the word egg makes it last longer. You check the little wooden box where they sometimes lay. Today there's nothing, only straw. You let out a breath you didn't realize you were holding. Outside again, the wind is picked up. It threads icy fingers down the back of your neck. You tilt your face slightly, watching the sky. The clouds look heavier now, darker in their bellies. More snow, maybe. More cold. The village, such as it is, lies quiet low huts scattered along the path. Thin trails of smoke drifting from crooked chimneys. You can hear a baby crying somewhere, unseen. A dog barking once, Then quiet again. Dot, as you head toward the village well, you pass a neighbor's cottage. The door is open just a crack, and you can hear coughing inside. Deep, wet, rattling coughs that don't sound like they belong to a strong body. You pause without thinking, listening. The sound makes the fine hairs on your arms rise. You know that sound. Everyone knows that sound. Dot, in winter, illness is another villager. One that visits uninvited. One that overstays. The woman of the house appears in the doorway, her shawl pulled tight, her face gray with worry and lack of sleep. You catch her eye and give a small nod, the kind that asks a question without words. She shakes her head, only slightly, lips pressed together. Her eyes shine with the kind of tired that isn't just from work. Fever, she murmurs, almost to herself, almost to you. Since last night. You step closer, feeling the cold seep through your boots as you stand in the snow. Have you any herbs left? You ask quietly. Your voice matches the winter, soft, careful, not wanting to break anything fragile. She gives a small, humorless laugh. A few. Not many. The priest says to pray. She glances back into the dark interior of the cottage. I do, but the prayers feel thin when the coughing starts. You know that feeling. The helplessness of listening to someone struggle for breath in the dark when the wind is howling and the fire is burning low. You want to say something comforting, but the words feel clumsy in your mouth. So instead you do something simpler. You reach into the pocket of your cloak and pull out a tiny cloth bundle. Dried leaves. Not many. You were saving them. But saving them for what, exactly? For who? Here, you say quietly, placing it into her palm. A bit of thyme. If you boil it, it might help his chest. Or at least, it will make the air smell kinder. Her eyes fill immediately, and she looks away for a moment, swallowing hard. When she faces you again, her voice is hoarse. God bless you, she whispers. You'll come by later? You nod. Yes, I'll check in. After dark, you almost add, if the snow isn't too heavy, but you stop yourself. You'll come, heavy snow or not. Winter has already taken too much from too many. You move on, your steps slower now. The well stands at the edge of the village, a circle of stone with its wooden frame dusted in frost. The rope feels stiff beneath your hands, your knuckles cracked and sore, the skin raw from cold and work. You lower the bucket, listening to the dull splash as it hits the icy water beneath. Drawing water in winter is different. Heavier, more dangerous. You lean your weight into the crank, pulling the sloshing bucket back up. The water that spills over the edge freezes almost instantly on the stone rim, adding another glittering layer to the treacherous ground. You pour some into your jug carefully, steadying it with your numb fingers. You know that the water might not be clean. You know that sickness can hide in clear liquid. But this is the only water there is. When you turn back toward home, the wind is right in your face. Your eyes water, your nose burns, and your cheeks ache with the sting. You lower your head and simply walk one step, then another, your breath puffing out in small clouds that vanish as quickly as they appear. On the way, you pass the small church, its wooden door slightly ajar. You can hear a murmur inside. Not full service, just a few voices. A prayer, a plea. You hesitate, then slip through the door, grateful for any break from the wind. The inside of the church is dim, lit by a few candles that flicker and bend in the drafts. The light paints the stone floor in puddles of gold that don't quite reach the edges. Your breath still steams in the air. It's not much warmer in here, just less sharp. A handful of villagers kneel on the rough benches. Most wear the same tired expression, eyes shadowed, cheeks hollow, mouths drawn. Winter presses on everyone the same way, just with different weights. You let yourself sink to one knee, not thinking too hard about the words you say. Your prayer becomes less about Latin phrases and more about simple thoughts. Let the food last. Let the sick child live. Snow, be gentle this year. Spring, remember us. The candle nearest to you spits wax, and a tiny bead of it slides down the side, hardening as it goes. You watch it for a moment, beaded and white, then cross yourself and stand again. The priest nods slightly as you pass him. He knows you. He knows the lines of hunger and worry in your face, in everyone's faces. Outside once more, the sound of your boots on the snow feels louder. You make your way home, water jug heavy in your hand, mind drifting over a list you've been carrying in your head all morning. How much grain is left. Logs remain by the door. Days until the next holy day brings a little extra food, a little extra warmth. Inside the cottage, the air is thick with a mixture of smoke and steam. Someone, your mother, your wife, an older sister, has started a pot hanging over the fire. The smell is humble but comforting. Onions, maybe. A handful of dried peas. A scrap of salted meat, if you were lucky enough to have any left. The children look up when you come in. Their eyes go first to the jug in your hands, then to your face. They don't ask questions. They don't have to. You can read the question in their gaze. Is there enough? You set the jug down gently, flexing your sore fingers, and move toward the hearth. The fire is small, just a few sticks burning, but you feel its heat like a blessing on your frozen skin. You hold your hands over it, turning them slowly, letting color creep back into your knuckles. The room is cramped. Every sound overlaps with the next. A spoon scraping the side of a pot. A child sniffing, wiping a nose on a sleeve. Someone shifting on the straw, making it rustle softly. The wind rattling at the shutter, always trying to get in. You take a wooden bowl when it's offered, and the portion inside is modest. A ladle of thin pottage, a floating bit of vegetable, a small piece of bread, tough and dark, cut more thinly than you'd like. Still, you cradle the bowl with both hands, drawing it close to your chest, feeling the heat seep into your fingers. You blow on the surface, watching the steam dance upward. The first taste is simple, salty, earthy, warm. Warm is the important part. You eat slowly, because eating quickly only makes the hunger louder when you finish. The children eat faster, their spoons clinking against the sides of their bowls, their faces intent. There is no second helping. There rarely is. When the bowls are scraped clean, you help wipe them out with a scrap of coarse cloth. No food is wasted. Every little smear is precious. The day crawls forward. Winter days do that. They feel both endless and terribly short. You might spend part of the afternoon mending things. Mending never ends. You sit near the window where the pale light is strongest, patching holes in a cloak, restitching a torn seam, tightening worn leather. Your fingers are clumsy in the cold, but you work anyway. because you don't have the luxury of replacing anything that's torn. As you sew, your mind wanders. You think about summers that felt almost too hot, when the air was thick with the smell of fresh cut hay and the ground was warm against your bare feet. You think about the way the fields looked then, green, alive, buzzing. It feels like a dream now, like a story you were told as a child. Outside, the light begins to shift again, fading to the soft, muted shades of late afternoon. Shadows lengthen across the snow. Smoke from the chimneys rises straight up at first, then leans as the wind changes direction. Someone's dog barks once, then twice, then falls silent. You step out to split a few more logs before the darkness comes. You can't leave that job for later. Later it will be too cold, too dark. You set each piece of wood on the chopping block, lift the axe and bring it down with a thud that echoes in the still air. The rhythm is oddly soothing. Lift, breathe, swing, crack. Each split log is another hour of warmth tonight. Another barrier between your family and the cold that waits just beyond the thin walls. Your shoulders ache. Your hands grow more tender with each swing, but you keep going until the small pile beside the door looks just a little less small. You know it's still not enough for the whole winter, but you also know that winters are not survived all at once. They're survived in little pieces, one log at a time, a bowl of soup at a time, one day at a time. By the time you carry the last of the wood inside, the sky has turned the color of bruised fruit, deep blue and purple and gray, all at once. The first star appears faint and distant, and you feel the day slipping away. Inside, someone has lit a tallow candle. Its flame is small, smell is sharp and greasy, but its light feels like a promise. You close the door firmly behind you, shutting out the wind. For a moment, you just stand there, listening. The faint crackle of the fire, low murmur of a voice telling a story, the soft sigh of someone settling down on the straw. Winter may rule outside, but in here, in this cramped, smoky little space, you have carved out a tiny island of warmth, of stubbornness, of life. You move closer to the hearth, ready to settle into the long evening. Hunger still curls quietly in your belly, and worry still sits in your chest like a stone. But you are here. Your family is here. The roof still holds. The fire still burns. For tonight, that is enough. And as the shadows gather and the last light fades from the sky, you feel the weight of another winter day lowering itself gently onto your shoulders. Heavy, yes, but familiar. You have carried days like this before. You will carry this one. Night in winter does not arrive gently. It falls suddenly, heavily, like a thick curtain dropping over the world. One moment you can still see the outline of the hills, the bare branches of the trees stretching like black fingers into the dimming sky. And the next, everything is swallowed by darkness. Inside your cottage, the fire becomes the center of the universe. The flames snap softly, throwing warm patches of orange across the walls. The light flickers over faces lined with fatigue, over rough-hewn wooden bowls, over the small bundle of straw where the youngest child already sleeps curled like a kitten. The wind outside shifts again, louder now. It presses against the shutters with long, low groans, rattling the hinges as if testing them. You feel the vibrations through the floorboards, Winter nights have a way of making even the solid feel fragile. You sit close to the fire, pulling your cloak tighter around your shoulders. Your hands hover over the flames. They tingle painfully as the warmth pushes its way back into your fingertips. Tiny cracks in your skin reopen, stinging with heat. It hurts, but it's the kind of pain you welcome. Pain means you can feel your hands. Pain means you've won another small battle against the cold. Someone stirs the pot hanging over the fire, scraping the last remnants of supper from the bottom. The smell is faint, mostly onions, a whisper of herbs, a lingering hint of salt. It's not much, but it fills the room with comfort, the kind that comes more from memory than from fullness. A child yawns loudly. Another coughs a small, sharp sound that makes every adult in the room tense without meaning to. Winter makes every cough sound dangerous. Outside, the wind picks up again. This time it howls long and low, like a living thing. The walls tremble, roof creaks, the children shrink closer together. You can see fear flicker in their eyes, but no one says it aloud. Winter night is a thing to respect. You shift your seat and glance toward the shutter. You know the latch is secure, but your mind still imagines the wind prying its way in, not with malice, just with indifference. Winter isn't cruel because it wants to be. Winter is cruel because it doesn't care. You lean back and let your gaze drift to the fire again. Its light dances over the rough stones of the hearth, warming only a small patch of the room. Beyond that, everything fades into cool gray shadows. Someone begins to speak. A story passed down from their parents. A tale of a winter long ago when the snow piled higher than a man's shoulders, when wolves came down from the hills, when the river froze so solid that even carts could cross it without fear. The children listen wide-eyed. You listen too, not because the story is new, but because stories are part of survival. Stories distract. Stories warm. Stories keep fear at bay. While the tale continues. You quietly get up and check on the small bundle of herbs you keep wrapped in cloth. You untie the knot and examine what's left. Thyme, a little sage, a few dried berries. Not much. Far less than you'd like. You tie it closed again. Herbs are not eaten quickly in winter. They are saved, stretched, prayed over. Your thoughts drift to the sick villager you promised to check on after dark. Your stomach tightens. It's a long walk in the cold. You'll have to brave the wind, the darkness, and the deep silence that hides all sorts of dangers. But you'll go. Winter teaches you duty. You sit again and the story around the fire slowly dies out. The speaker's voice grows softer. The children slump against blankets and against each other. Someone adds 2 more logs to the fire and they sputter before catching flame. The room glows again, warm, alive. But night presses harder from outside. And in winter, night feels very, very long. Eventually, the little ones drift to sleep. Then the older ones. Then even the dog curls up near the door, tail tucked under its nose. You stay awake a while longer, listening. The wind, the fire, soft breathing. A crack in the roof timbers settling with a quiet pop. Footsteps somewhere in the snow outside. Maybe a deer, maybe something else. You don't panic. You just listen. You've lived through enough winters to know that fear wastes energy. When the fire burns lower, you get up again. You pull a heavy fur across the doorframe to block the drafts. You tuck blankets around the sleeping children. You make sure no embers escape the hearth. Winter respects preparation. Preparation respects survival. Finally, you spread your own blanket on the straw by the fire and lower yourself onto it, joints aching from the cold, but grateful to be inside and not out in the biting night. You stare at the dim glow of the coals. They pulse softly like a heartbeat. And for a long moment, you let yourself simply breathe. You made it through the day. You made it into the night. Tomorrow, you will rise and do it again. This is medieval winter. Not glamorous, not grand, but real, raw, and full of small victories that matter more than you ever admit aloud. As you close your eyes, the wind howls again, but it feels a little farther away now, a little less interested in breaking through. Sleep comes slowly, like a cautious visitor, but when it arrives, it wraps around you quietly, softly, like a blanket warmed by the fire, and for a few precious hours, you let go of the cold, you let go of the worry. You rest because surviving winter means gathering strength for the next day. And the next, and the next. Until the earth remembers warmth again, the winter morning comes quietly, not with sunlight, but with a faint gray suggestion of dawn. You feel it before you even open your eyes, the cold pressing in through every seam of your cottage, settling over you like an extra blanket made of ice. You inhale. The air is sharp enough to sting your nose. You exhale. Your breath curls visibly in front of you. It's morning. But winter mornings do not feel like beginnings. They feel like continuations, as if the night never really ended. You rise slowly, joints stiff, knees protesting. A thin layer of frost glints along the inside of the window shutters, delicate patterns etched by the night's unrelenting breath. Your first thought is not of food, or warmth, or comfort. It is of work. Because in medieval winter, work is survival. You stand and wrap your cloak around your shoulders. The wool feels rough against your skin, but it holds in heat better than anything else you own. Behind you, the children still sleep in bundled layers, their cheeks cold and pink. One of them shifts, pulling a thin blanket tighter. You move quietly so you don't wake them. There is no reason for the little ones to rise yet. There's no school, no idle morning, no luxury of time. Their day will come soon enough. You push the heavy wooden door open. The cold greets you like a slap, immediate, honest, unavoidable. Snow crunches beneath your feet in that distinct winter rhythm, the kind that tells you just how deep the frost runs. The world outside is muted. Sound travels differently in the cold. It is swallowed quickly. Your breath billows out in soft white plumes as you make your way toward the small pile of wood stacked outside your home. You count the pieces without meaning to. You do it every morning. 1, 2, 3. Too few. Always too few. Your mind begins its usual calculations. How many logs today? How long can I stretch them? Will tomorrow be colder? It is the mathematics of survival. You gather a few pieces and carry them inside. Your fingers burn as they begin to warm again in the glow of the rekindled fire. The flames rise slowly, and with them come the small comforts of morning, light, warmth, the faint smell of smoke. Soon the children wake. Their faces brighten. when they see the fire. Even if only a little, even if only for a moment, you share a small bowl of warm pottage among them. Oats, water, maybe a leftover scrap of last night's vegetables. The pot makes a soft bubbling sound as you stir it. Each child receives a portion too small to satisfy, but large enough to quiet their stomachs for a few hours. Food is not meant to fill. Food is meant to sustain. When everyone has eaten, you step outside again. This time with intention, because winter or not, work waits, and the work of medieval life does not pause for the season. You make your way toward the fields. Snow covers everything, turning the landscape into a blank page. The fences look like ribs sticking up from a body buried underneath the white. You bend and gather fallen branches, your fingers numb even through your gloves. Some branches are soaked through, heavy with frost. They will smoke before they burn. But smoke is better than nothing. Farther ahead, you see other villagers doing the same. They walk with their shoulders hunched, blankets wrapped around their heads, small clouds rising with each breath. No one speaks loudly. Winter steals enthusiasm from voices. You join the group, nodding greetings. Everyone nods back. Words are unnecessary. Everyone knows why everyone is here. Together, you begin the morning's labor. The tasks of winter vary: chopping wood, repairing fences damaged by storms, breaking ice near the animals' troughs, checking roofs for weak points, mending tools that have grown brittle in the cold. You grip your axe and begin to chop. The sound cracks through the still air. Thunk, thunk, thunk. Each strike sends a sting up your arms. Your breath grows ragged. Your hands tremble slightly from the cold, from the effort, from the hunger. But you keep going, because stopping means losing heat. Stopping means losing daylight. Stopping means making tomorrow harder. Around you, others move in patterns that are almost ritualistic in their familiarity. A man carries water from the partially frozen well, the bucket clanging with chunks of ice. A woman scrapes snow from her cottage roof, shaking loose a cloud of powder. A teenager tries to coax a stubborn goat out of its shelter, the poor creature refusing to step into the cold. Above, the sky remains a dull gray. It is impossible to tell the time by the light. It never grows bright, only slightly less dark. You glance toward the fields again, now a wide expanse of silent white. Beneath the snow lie the remnants of last year's harvest, and beneath that, the frozen earth waiting for spring. But spring feels impossibly far away. After a while, you pause. Your breath drags in and out in slow, controlled pulls. Your muscles ache in ways you've grown used to. A small tremor shakes your fingers. Winter labor is not heroic. It is not grand. It is not romantic. It is necessary. You straighten your back and stretch your arms. The cold bites at your exposed skin. Your eyes water from the wind. You blink hard, trying to clear them. When you look around again, you notice something you didn't see before. A faint trail of footprints leading toward the woods. Too small to be a man's, too light to be a full-grown animal. You frown, pulse quickening. Footprints in winter always mean something. A child who wandered too far. A hungry wolf searching for scraps. A thief moving under cover of snowfall. You follow the prints just long enough to make sure they do not lead to danger, then turn back. You cannot afford to lose daylight on fear. Not today. Not any day. Dot. As you resume chopping wood, the village begins to stir more fully. Smoke rises from distant rooftops. Someone shouts for help thawing a frozen latch. A dog barks at something unseen. Life continues. Hard, cold, slow, but it continues. Hours pass, though you would not know it by the sky. Winter dulls the sun until it feels more like a memory than a companion. By midday, your fingers are nearly numb. Your feet hurt with a deep, bone-heavy ache. Your stomach growls softly, but you ignore it. Everyone ignores it. Hunger becomes a background sound in winter. The work does not stop. The cold does not stop, but neither do you. Because here, in this time and place, movement is what keeps you alive. You are not just working the land. You are wrestling against winter itself, every hour of every day. And the season watches with blank indifference as you fight to endure. You pause for a moment, leaning on the wooden handle of your axe. The cold has already seeped into your bones, settling there with a stubborn weight. Your breath comes in slow, white clouds, drifting upward and disappearing into the muted morning air. After a few heartbeats, you straighten again, because the rhythm of winter work leaves little room for rest. You wipe your hands on your cloak and move on to the next task, checking the roof. Your house is small, its roof made of thatch that has held through storms but always threatens to give way under heavy snow. You climb the short ladder, your fingers gripping the cold wood with careful precision. From up here, you can see more of the village, chimneys releasing thin trails of smoke. Women bent over washtubs, breaking sheets of ice to reach water beneath. A few men trudging toward the forest edge, axes slung over their shoulders, faces set with determination. Children collecting straws and twigs, their small footsteps disappearing behind them. The entire settlement moves like a single organism, each person doing what keeps the whole alive. You brush snow from the roof, your hands moving in slow, steady arcs. Small clumps fall to the ground below, thudding softly into the drift. Your fingers sting from the cold, even through your gloves, and your arms grow tired almost immediately. But still you work, because in winter, every small task has weight. A sagging roof can collapse. A weak door hinge can break in the night. A frozen trough means animals go thirsty. A broken fence means wolves wander too close. Nothing is minor. Nothing is optional. When you climb down, your boots hit the ground with a soft crunch, that crisp, brittle sound that never quite leaves your ears during these months. And you, like everyone around you, rise to meet it. You wipe your hands on your cloak again, shaking off a thin dusting of snow. Your breath floats in front of you, drifting into the still air like a small, pale cloud. The sky hasn't changed. The same muted gray stretches overhead. But you know the day is moving on. Work always tells you the time more reliably than the sun does. You continue along the narrow path that winds between the cottages. It's barely more than packed earth covered in snow, but it is the spine of the village. Everything branches off from it. Your boots crunch softly as you walk, the sound muffled by the cold. And as you make your way through the settlement, you see the different rhythms of winter labor unfolding all around you. By now, more villagers are out. Women cluster near doorways and small lean-to shelters, their hands red from scrubbing clothes in icy water. Their breath rises in steady clouds. Their knuckles crack as they wring out linens, their sleeves damp with melted snow. A child sits nearby, rubbing their hands together and blowing warm breath onto stinging fingers. Another gathers fallen sticks and little scraps of firewood, a chore that would be simple in summer, but feels monumental now. A little farther away, men drag logs from the forest's edge, shoulders hunched, their wool caps pressed low. Some sharpen tools on flat stones, the scrape, scrape, scrape echoing through the cold air. You glance toward the far end of the village where the largest cottage stands. That is the home of the village reeve, the man responsible for organizing taxes, settling small disputes, and reporting to the Lord's officials. Even his home seems cold. No one is exempt from winter. Still, his family has thicker cloaks, more hay, a better roof. Their smoke rises from the chimney in a strong, steady line. You can feel the presence of social order everywhere. Not hostile, not oppressive, just unbreakable. Some families have a small reserve of grain. Others scrape by. Some have 2 cows. Others survive on 1 chicken, and whatever the forest offers. Winter reveals the truth of wealth faster than any other season. You pause beside a fence, listening. Winter has a sound, a quiet, heavy sound made up of little pieces, the crack of wood splitting, the swish of hay being moved, the whicker of a cold, restless horse, the creak of frozen leather, the distant thud of someone falling on ice followed by a groan, a baby's thin cry cutting through the silence, dogs barking half-heartedly at shadows they cannot see clearly. Every noise feels sharper in the cold, more important, more personal. Still, it feels good, refreshing in its own brutal way. When you finish, you help the next person pull up their bucket. Then the next. And then another. It is slow, careful teamwork. If one person slips, if one rope snaps, if one bucket crashes back down, that water freezes until midday or longer, and there is no quick replacement. This is the unspoken truth of winter. The simplest tasks become dangerous. The smallest mistakes become costly. The most ordinary routines become battles that you continue working through the morning. Each task blending into the next, repairing a broken latch, clearing snow from a neighbor's doorway, checking the smoke holes on the roof. Every job has weight. Every job has consequence. Every job is tiring, and yet the village moves like an orchestra, quiet, efficient, determined. You see it in the bent shoulders of elders gathering sticks, in the steady steps of men returning from the forest carrying logs, in the focused faces of women kneading cold dough near their fires. Everyone contributes. Everyone is needed. Everyone is tired. As midday approaches, though the sky looks no different, you stop to catch your breath. You lean against the wooden fence and look around. Winter work feels endless, but there is a strange kind of rhythm to it. Not pleasant, not gentle, but grounding. It reminds you that even in the harshest season, life has structure. Life has movement. Life has purpose. Your breath slows. Your hands loosen. Your feet steady beneath you. For a moment, the cold flesh sharp. Not warmer, just less threatening. Then someone calls your name and you turn, ready for the next task, ready to keep going, because that is what winter demands. Constant motion, constant effort, constant resilience. And you, like everyone around you, rise to meet it. You wipe your hands on your cloak again, shaking off a thin dusting of snow. Your breath floats in front of you, drifting into the still air like a small, pale cloud. The sky hasn't changed. The same muted gray stretches overhead. But you know the day is moving on. Work always tells you the time more reliably than the sun does. You continue along the narrow path that winds between the cottages. It's barely more than packed earth covered in snow, but it is the spine of the village. Everything branches off from it. Your boots crunch softly as you walk, the sound muffled by the cold dot. And as you make your way through the settlement, you see the different rhythms of winter labor unfolding all around you. By now, more villagers are out. Women cluster near doorways and small lean-to shelters, their hands red from scrubbing clothes in icy water. Their breath rises in steady clouds. Their knuckles crack as they wring out linens, their sleeves damp with melted snow. A child sits nearby, rubbing their hands together and blowing warm breath onto stinging fingers. Another gathers fallen sticks and little scraps of firewood, a chore that would be simple in summer, but feels monumental now. A little farther away, men drag logs from the forest's edge, shoulders hunched, their wool caps pressed low. Some sharpen tools on flat stones, the scrape, scrape, scrape echoing through the cold air. You glance toward the far end of the village where the largest cottage stands. That is the home of the village reeve, the man responsible for organizing taxes, settling small disputes, and reporting to the Lord's officials. Even his home seems cold. No one is exempt from winter. Still, his family has thicker cloaks, more hay, a better roof. Their smoke rises from the chimney in a strong, steady line. You can feel the presence of social order everywhere. Not hostile, not oppressive, just unbreakable. Some families have a small reserve of grain. Others scrape by. Some have 2 cows. Others survive on 1 chicken, and whatever the forest offers. Winter reveals the truth of wealth faster than any other season. You pause beside a fence, listening. Winter has a sound, a quiet, heavy sound made up of little pieces, the crack of wood splitting, the swish of hay being moved, the whicker of a cold, restless horse, the creak of frozen leather, the distant thud of someone falling on ice followed by a groan, a baby's thin cry cutting through the silence, dogs barking half-heartedly at shadows they cannot see clearly. Every noise feels sharper in the cold, more important, more personal. Even the wind has a voice, whispering along the rooftops, slipping through cracks, tugging at door latches like a patient visitor waiting to be let in. Somewhere behind you, a woman calls out, "Mind the ice." Then a laugh, a rare, warm sound. It lingers just a moment before fading into the heavy quiet. Even laughter feels fragile in winter. Your next task takes you to the workshop, a simple lean-to structure built against the side of a cottage. Inside, tools hang from wooden pegs, worn hammers, a dented iron pot, a few saws, their teeth dull with age, 2 axes, handles polished from years of use, a cracked leather strap, a stone used for sharpening. You pick up the nearest axe and test its edge with your thumb. Dull. You knew it would be. Everything dulls faster in winter tools. hands, minds. You sit on a small stool and begin sharpening, pulling the blade along the stone in slow, rhythmic strokes. Shke, shirk, shirk. Each movement warms your arms. Each scrape sends a faint vibration through your fingers' dot as you work. You feel something subtle, the way the cold makes wood harder, the way the iron handle bites more sharply into your palm, the way your breath fogs the blade before drifting away. Tools are not objects here. They are lifelines, extensions of your hands. Friends you treat with quiet respect. A young boy approaches, his cheeks red from the wind. He watches you with wide eyes as you sharpen the blade. Is it ready? He asks softly. Almost, you reply, turning the axe over. He nods, clutching a small bundle of twigs to his chest as if it were treasure. Twigs are treasure in winter. He shuffles his feet, then asks a second question, one you've heard from many children this time of year. Will spring come soon? You pause. You don't want to lie. You don't want to frighten him, Dot, so you answer quietly, it will come. It always does. But winter must finish speaking first. He accepts that the way children accept things out of necessity, and he runs off toward his family's cottage. You watch him go, the bundle of sticks almost larger than he is, Dot, as the afternoon wears on. You see a rider approaching from the direction of the manor house, a tall figure on a dark horse, cloak whipping behind him. Even from a distance, you know the silhouette, a steward, a messenger, a reminder the Lord does not live in your village, but his presence is always here in the taxes you pay, the grain you owe, the land you work but do not own. The rider trots slowly past the cottages, lifting his chin as he glances down at each home. His horse snorts steam into the air. You step aside as he passes. He does not speak to you. He does not need to Dot. His presence alone says enough. He is checking stores, checking readiness, checking whether the village will survive the winter well enough to pay dues in spring. You watch him continue down the path, his figure shrinking into the gray distance. When he finally disappears, you let out a long breath, one you didn't realize you were holding. Winter is hard, but hierarchy is harder, Dot. It does not bend. It does not soften. It does not melt like snow, Dot. It stands, even now. Even here, Dot, by the time you lift the next tool, your fingers are stiff again. Your shoulders ache from the cold. Your lips crack when you smile at a neighbor's greeting, but you keep working. Everyone keeps working, Dot, because winter does not pause for exhaustion, or hunger, or fear, or longing. The afternoon moves quietly around you, each minute carrying the weight of survival, Dot. Outside the workshop, a woman sweeps snow away from her doorway with slow, steady strokes. A man repairs a broken yoke. Another chops wood with careful precision. Children gather fire starters, stamping their feet to stay warm. Dogs curl near door frames, their fur dusted with snow. Life here is not easy, but it is shared, Dot, and that makes all the difference. The afternoon light dims again, though it never truly brightened. A silvery haze settles across the village, casting long, soft shadows over the snow. Your breath drifts slower now, heavier, rising in little clouds that vanish into the pale air, Dot. You stretch your fingers, feeling the ache of the day's labor settling deeper into your bones. Winter work always feels heavier near the end of the day, as if the cold grows sharper the moment it senses your exhaustion. you begin making your way toward home. But you move slowly, passing through the heart of the village where the quiet rules of life become more visible. Just ahead, you notice a small gathering, not loud, not frantic, just tense. A few villagers stand in a loose circle around a man kneeling in the snow. You recognize him by his frayed cloak and his hollow cheeks. A villager accused of stealing grain. You step closer, not out of curiosity, but because everyone steps closer. In a place where every family walks along the thin edge between hunger and survival, theft is not simply wrong. It is dangerous. A man in a clean wool coat, the reeve, stands over the accused, his arms crossed, steam rising from his breath in sharp bursts. His expression is cold, but not unkind. He looks tired. He looks resigned. Stealing grain in winter is one of the few things that brings swift consequences, not jail. Jails are for richer towns, not whipping that wastes strength. Instead, the punishment is something quieter but heavy. The man must repay double when spring comes. You feel the shift in the air. The villagers relax only slightly at the decision. A harsh punishment, yes, but not cruel. The kind of punishment that keeps the village whole. The accused bows his head. Everyone disperses. You walk on, feeling the weight of what you just saw. Not judgment. Not shock, not just understanding, because hunger pushes people in ways pride cannot stop. And winter tests everyone. By late afternoon, the cold grows sharper, a thin, cutting cold that sneaks under your cloak and presses against your spine. This is when wolves come closer to the edges of the village. You hear one now, a low, distant howl drifting over the fields. It's faint, barely more than a whisper, but in winter, every animal grows bold. You pause. Listen again. The sound does not return, but you remain still for several seconds, sensing the quiet. Wolves do not fear the cold. Wolves do not fear hunger. And winter brings both. You continue walking, boots sinking softly in the fresh layer of snow. Your senses sharper now, attuned to every crack of ice, every rustle of wind, every shadow shifting at the forest's edge. Danger is not always dramatic here. Often it is simply presenta, thin frost on a ladder rung, a cracked roof beam, a slippery stone hiding beneath the snow, a fire burning too low, a forgotten bucket of water turning to ice. Any small mistake can become a threat. Winter keeps a quiet tally. Before the day completely fades, you check one last duty, the communal storehouse, a small, sturdy building near the center of the village, built with thick wooden beams and reinforced doors. It holds grain contributed by every family, the emergency supply, the safeguard against famine, the village's collective heartbeat. Inside, you see the grain stacked in sacks along the walls. Not much, never enough. You run your hand along the rough fabric of one sack, feeling the kernels shifting under your touch. Each sack represents days, sometimes weeks of life. You help the reeve measure small rations for 2 families with sick members. No one questions it. No one argues. Winter does not leave room for selfishness. You lift one of the sacks and carry it across the room. The weight drags your arms downward. You brace yourself, adjusting your grip, the coarse fibers scratching your fingertips. When you set it down, dust rises from the floor. catching in the fading light like tiny sparks. Another task done that another moment survived. When you step outside, you notice two men walking toward the manor road, the same direction the steward appeared from earlier. They walk with purposeful steps, coats pulled tight against the cold. You recognize them as men summoned to report on winter stores and labor progress. They will speak to the Lord's officials. They will deliver news of the village. They will ask quietly, politely for leniency if the harvest was thin, and the officials will decide how hard the coming spring will be. Winter is not the only force shaping your life. Power travels in footsteps, not storms. You watch the two men disappear into the pale horizon, their figures shrinking against the snow. There's a heaviness in their steps that you understand deeply. By the time you turn back toward your cottage, the world has begun to dim again. The sky deepens from gray to blue, then from blue to the kind of winter twilight that feels almost purple. You move slowly. Your muscles ache. Your stomach gnaws gently with hunger that has become familiar. Your fingers burn with the sting of cold. But there is warmth waiting. You push your door open and step into the soft, flickering glow of your fire. The smell of smoke clings to your clothes. The smell of cooking clings to the air. A thin broth simmers in the pot, and you hear soft voices inside, tired voices but warm ones. You close the door behind you and feel the weight of the day loosen across your shoulders. Work does not end in winter, but it pauses here. It softens. You join your family by the hearth, settling onto the straw beside them. The fire crackles softly, casting rippling light across the walls. A child curls up next to you. Your hand finds theirs, small and cold. You exhale slowly. The world outside remains harsh, dark, and unforgiving. But in this room, you have carved out a pocket of warmth. A fragile one, a temporary one, but a real one. And as the flames settle into a steady glow, you feel yourself beginning to drift, not into sleep, but into a quiet understanding. Winter may own the land, but you own these moments. Small, precious, human. This is how people survived, not through strength alone, but through togetherness. As the last warmth of the day fades into the cold silence of evening, the village breathes out its exhaustion, and somewhere in the quiet, another world waits for us. Let's drift gently onward, into the thoughts, fears, and beliefs that helped people endure the darkest season of all. The night settles around the village like a heavy blanket, thick and deep and impossibly still. Inside your cottage, the fire glows gently, throwing soft amber light across the walls. The children huddle under their blankets. An older relative warms stiff hands near the flames. Outside, the darkness is complete. And in this kind of darkness, the world feels larger, wilder, closer. You sit for a moment, letting the quiet press softly around you. And it becomes clearer how much winter shaped not only work and hunger, but thought, belief, the stories whispered between breaths. Because in a world where the night can stretch for 16 hours, and where the sun often fails to rise in anything more than a pale silver shimmer. People needed meaning as much as they needed food. You sink a little closer to the fire, rubbing your hands over its warmth. The room is dim, but safe. Still, you can feel that ancient tug, the sense that the winter night is watching. And so, like everyone in your village, you carry a quiet awareness. There are things you understand, and things you do not. And winter sits in that second category. You hear the wind outside, long, low breaths, like something alive moving across the fields. Your eyes drift toward the shutter, half expecting to see shadows passing behind it. People say winter nights are longer not because the sun disappears, but because the world beyond your doorstep grows more crowded. You grew up with stories of spirits that travel during the darkest months, spirits that wander not with malice, but with hunger or curiosity. The elders speak of the winter walkers, shapes seen at the edge of forests or footprints appearing where no one had passed. Stories are not told loudly. They are whispered, softly, the way you might speak to calm a frightened child, or to avoid drawing attention from something listening in the dark. Winter does that to people. It blurs the line between nature and imagination. You shift closer to the fire, resting your elbows on your knees. The warmth reaches your palms and slowly seeps upward into your arms. Behind you, someone murmurs a quiet prayer, not formal, not memorized, but instinctive. Winter creates its own religion. You can feel the pull of both fear and faith blending into each other. When the snow falls this heavily, when the ground freezes so deeply, when livestock grow thin, when children cough in the night, the line between faith and survival becomes thin. You grew up reciting prayers during storms. Keep the roof strong. Keep the fire alive. Keep the sickness away. Keep us warm until light returns. Simple words, but heavy ones. Sometimes during winter, people tilt the crucifix on the wall toward the door, facing outward as though guarding the family from spirits that drift along the paths. Sometimes they place a sprig of dried herbs under pillows or tie a small charm to the wooden beam above the fire. No one calls these things superstitions. Not out loud. They call them care, caution, custom. Because in winter, you don't tempt fate. You don't assume safety. You do what your parents did and what their parents did when the world felt colder and larger. It's not about logic. It's about survival. You glance toward the far corner of the room where the shadows gather. They look thicker now, the way they always do during winter. Not dangerous, exactly. Just present. People say that winter shadows have weight. They sit differently. They move differently. They cling to corners and rafters as though they're alive. And maybe in some way they are, because your ancestors believed that winter did not simply arrive on its own. Winter brought things with it. The old stories tell of the wild hunt, a ghostly procession sweeping across the sky in winter storms. Yule spirits that visit homes with blessings or warnings. The long shadow of midwinter nights that swallowed travelers whole. Household spirits who needed offerings, crumbs, milk, ash, to stay content. You remember hearing these tales by the fire as a child, huddled close to warmth, eyes wide, hands clutching a blanket. You don't believe all of them now, but you don't dismiss them either. No one dismisses winter myths in midwinter. Not when you hear wolves howling. Not when the wind rattles the shutters. Not when illness strikes without warning. not when the snow hides familiar paths. Fear teaches humility. Winter enforces it. You stretch your feet toward the hearth, feeling the warmth soak into your boots. The fire crackles softly. Its light dances on the walls, chasing the shadows back, but never fully banishing them. Fire is not just warmth. It is protection, a living thing you must tend constantly. You think of all the nights you've woken suddenly because the room felt too cold, a sign that the fire was dying and needed feeding. Letting the fire go out in winter is not a mistake. It is a threat. Some families keep a single coal alive through the night, wrapped in ash. Others take turns staying awake. Some rely on neighbors to share flame. Fire is community. Fire is life. Even now, as you sit near it, you know this flame links you to thousands of winters before and thousands after. People worship the sun not just because it rose, but because it was warmth. Here you worship the fire, quietly, without ceremony, but with deep reverence. As the night deepens, you feel that slight prickle on the back of your neck, the ancient sensation that something beyond the walls is moving, not a creature, not a person, just winter itself. People speak of midwinter as a time when the world grows thin, when boundaries blur, when strange dreams come, when the cries of the wind sound almost human. You listen for a moment. The wind whistles through a narrow gap under the roof, making a soft, mournful sound. You close your eyes, breathe slowly. Let the fire's warmth settle over your skin. Whatever the night holds, spirits, shadows, storms, you are inside. You are near the fire. You are alive. And in winter, that is the greatest blessing of all. The fire burns low now, its orange heart pulsing softly in the dim room. You shift your weight on the straw mat, pulling your cloak tighter, listening to the faint pops of the wood as it settles deeper into the coals. Outside, the wind sighs against the cottage walls, a long, weary sound. It is the kind of night that makes you think about the old rituals, the ones you were raised with, the ones you return to even if you pretend not to believe, because winter has a way of making the old stories feel close. This is the time of year when the entire village moves a little more deliberately. People speak softer, people walk slower, people look at the sky more often, watching for signs. Not signs of weather, though those matter too, but signs of blessing, warning, or shift. You remember the midwinter customs your parents followed. A sprig of evergreen hung above the door, a reminder of life, stubborn, green life, even when the world is white. A few crumbs left on the doorstep at night, gifts for wandering spirits so they would pass gently. A candle lit on the darkest night of the year to invite light back into the world. These rituals weren't grand. They were small gestures, soft, simple, human attempts to make peace with the long dark. And deep down, everyone knew the truth. They offered comfort as much as protection. Though food is scarce, the village still tries to hold one small feast in the heart of winter, a gathering to break the monotony of hunger and cold. It happens after sunset, usually on a night when the moon is high and the snow glows faintly under its light. People bring what they can: a heel of cheese, a handful of dried berries, a piece of smoked fish, a little honey saved from autumn. Candles flicker in the cold air as families stand close together, breath mingling in the dimness. Someone begins a song, low, slow, deep, and others join in, their voices layering like blankets. The sound rises up into the winter sky, carried across the fields. You feel something warm in your chest every time the village sings like this. Something like courage, something like hope. Even children seem quieter during these gatherings, sensing the meaning beneath the celebration. It isn't about abundance. It's about survival, shared survival. A reminder that no one endures winter alone. Later that same night, when the feast ends, you return home and see your mother rummaging through a small wooden box. Inside are little objects, tokens she has kept since before you were born. A braided thread, a smooth stone shaped like a tiny egg, a pouch of dried lavender, a strip of red cloth. She takes the red cloth and ties it around the beam above the door. You remember the meaning. Red protects against illness, against the winter breath that creeps under doors, against the invisible dangers that move in the dark. No one says these beliefs are true. No one says they are false. They simply exist, woven into life like the threads of your cloak. You watch her tie the knot, her fingers trembling slightly from age and cold. The cloth swings gently, catching the glow of the fire. It gives the room a feeling you recognize but cannot name, something between comfort and memory. The villagers read winter the way others read books. A ring around the moon means deeper cold ahead. Smoke rising straight upward means the air is still, storms are near. Crows gathering in large flocks means sickness passing through the region. A sudden warm breeze means the thaw may come early, or it may bring rain that freezes, coating the world in ice. You've learned these signs just by living here. No one teaches them. They seep into your mind slowly, year after year, like melting snow. Tonight, as you step outside to gather a bit more firewood, you see stars glittering between the branches, sharp, bright points in the dark. You know what that means? Clear sky, colder temperatures, a night when frost will bite harder. You gather the wood quickly, breath puffing in soft white bursts, and return inside, shutting the door firmly behind you. Winter teaches you to listen. Winter teaches you to watch. You sit again beside the fire, turning the little red cloth knot in your mind. You don't have to believe in magic to feel its comfort, because when the days are short and the nights feel endless and the cold presses into your bones, hope becomes its own kind of ritual, the kind that doesn't require proof, the kind that doesn't need to be explained. You watch the flames dance gently, their light flickering across the walls, softening every shadow. Your body relaxes. Your breath slows. You realize that winter belief, superstition, faith, ritual is not really about fear. It is about finding light in darkness. A whisper of protection, a gesture of warmth, a reminder that even when the world outside feels harsh and indifferent, someone somewhere believed that you could survive, and that belief itself becomes a kind of shelter. The fire has burned lower now, its glow turning a deeper, softer red. The room around you feels warmer, but still cold at the edges, especially near the door and along the stone floor. A few small sparks jump upward, then fade into the dim air. You shift your weight and pull your cloak around your shoulders more tightly. The cold nudges its way toward your ankles, making you curl your toes in your boots. Even surrounded by warmth, winter makes its presence known. Not harshly, not violently, just gently, constantly, like a reminder. This is the hour when your thoughts travel places they don't go in summer. When the world outside grows quiet, too quiet, your mind fills the silence with its own movement. You think about the day behind you, the faces of your neighbors, the weight of the wood you carried, the snow falling like soft feathers from the gray sky. And then your thoughts drift further, toward things you do not speak out loud. You think about the child in the cottage down the path, coughing through the night. You think about the elder whose breath grew thin last winter and didn't grow strong again. You think about the man who wandered too far into the woods and returned pale and shaking, claiming he'd seen something moving in the dark. Winter pulls memories forward like threads. Some you welcome, some you wish would stay buried beneath the snow. When the room grows quiet, you hear things you didn't notice earlier, the hush of your own breathing, the soft crackle of the coals. A faint drip from the roof where a small icicle melts just enough to fall. The wind brushing gently against the walls, like fingers tracing old wood. Each sound carries a different emotion: comfort, tension, loneliness, calm. You close your eyes for a moment, letting the sounds wash through you. Even the wind becomes a kind of lullaby, slow, distant, mournful, but rightful, natural. Winter is always sung this way. When the night stretches long, dreams take on a life of their own. Some people in your village believe winter dreams are messages. Others say they are memories from ancestors. Some believe they are nothing more than the mind trying to find warmth. You've had dreams that linger, dreams of green fields and full sun, dreams of rivers running fast and clear, dreams of the smell of summer hay drifting on a warm evening. Sometimes you wake with tears in your eyes, not from fear, but from longing, because winter blurs the memory of warmth. It dulls the color of everything. It makes the bright days feel like stories you imagined. Your dreams remind you they were real. This is the quiet contradiction of winter. The deeper the cold becomes, the sharper the memories of warmth grow. Dreams are not escape. They are reassurance. A promise whispered through the night. This will end. Light will return. Green will come back. You breathe slowly, deeply, letting the thoughts settle over you like another blanket. You look around your cottage, the low ceiling, the rough beams, the straw floor scattered with blankets. It isn't much, but it feels safe. Winter has taught you something most seasons never do. Fear and comfort live side by side. The fear that sickness may come, the fear that food may run low, the fear that storms may grow worse, but also the comfort of firelight, the comfort of family huddled close, the comfort of shared stories whispered softly in the dark, the comfort of simply surviving another day. You feel both things at once, a small ache in your chest and a small warmth, both truths, both real. This is the emotional heartbeat of winter, not despair, not suffering, but the steady awareness that life is fragile and precious and worth protecting. You reach for a piece of dried herb near the hearth, maybe lavender, maybe rosemary, a simple plant saved from the last warm months. You crush it gently between your fingers. The scent rises, faint but soothing, a reminder of sunlight and green fields. You breathe it in slowly. Again, then again. And in that moment you feel the distance between seasons shrink just a little. Winter doesn't disappear, but it softens. You place the crushed herb near your bed of straw, letting its smell linger in the air. Not as protection, not as magic, but as memory, as comfort, as hope. Two children murmur in their sleep. A log settles softly in the fire. Your own body relaxes in small, gradual waves. You close your eyes, but not to sleep yet, just to rest, to breathe, to release the day, to accept the night, and to let the mind drift gently toward the edge where thought becomes something quieter, softer, slower than thinking. This is how people survived winter nights, not through strength alone, but through surrender, a gentle surrender, a trusting surrender, knowing that morning would come again, perhaps weak, perhaps gray, but still a morning. And that was enough. The fire is low now, burning in soft pulses of orange and red. Shadows stretch longer across the walls, blending into the corners of the room like quiet, sleeping animals. Outside, the wind has softened. It still whispers against the wooden boards, but no longer with sharpness. It sounds almost thoughtful now, as if winter itself is pausing to rest. And inside, the world feels smaller, warmer, safer. Not because the cold has vanished, but because you have grown used to its presence. Winter teaches you many things: patience, stillness, courage. But one lesson rises above all others. No one survives winter alone. In every village, no matter how small, there were rituals that pulled people together during the harsh months. A neighbor bringing a few pieces of wood, a friend whispering a joke to lighten the air, a grandmother handing out a small cloth pouch of herbs for sleep, someone knocking on a door just to say, "How are you holding up?" Even a single human voice could warm the room more deeply than the fire. You remembered days when the snow was so thick it muffled everything: footsteps, laughter, even fear. And yet someone always found their way to the next cottage when it mattered. A shared loaf of bread, a steaming bowl of pottage, a story told just loud enough to reach another pair of cold ears. Winter pressed people inward, but it also pressed them together. That was its strange gift. There was something else, too, something hard to explain, a kind of gentle joy. Not loud joy, not summer joy, not laughter in the field joy, but a quiet warmth that came from the simplest things: the sound of a pot bubbling, the soft weight of a blanket, the first warm sip of broth after a long day, the sight of snow reflecting firelight into the dim room, a child falling asleep beside you, a visitor brushing frost from their coat as they step inside. Winter stripped life down to its bones, but in doing so, it revealed what mattered most: food, safety, companionship, hope. The harshness made every small comfort feel sacred. There were nights when the cold felt heavier than the blankets, when hunger hummed in the belly, when someone whispered a prayer under their breath, unsure whether it would be answered. And still, people laughed. They found reasons to smile, to tease, to sing softly, to gather even if gathering meant sitting close enough to share one candle's light. It wasn't denial. It wasn't naive optimism. It was survival of the spirit, a knowledge passed down through generations. Winter tests the body, but it will not take the heart unless you let it. And so the heart was guarded carefully, with stories, songs, companionship, and the ritual of simply being together. You let your eyes drift half closed. The warmth from the hearth touches your face like a gentle hand. A faint frost glimmers on the window, catching the firelight. Your body loosens, your breathing slows. The night is deep. The room is still. Your mind settles. You hear the soft crackle of the last log. Its glow flickers across the walls, steady, steady. Winter holds the world outside. But inside you are safe, held, sheltered. In the distance a dog barks once, then silence returns. the kind of silence that feels like a blanket. You pull your cloak around your shoulders. Your thoughts soften into a mist. Sleep is near. Not rushing, just arriving gently, like snow falling on quiet fields. And as you hover at the edge of rest, one thought drifts through your mind. If we can survive the darkest nights, the brightest mornings will feel all the sweeter. A truth medieval people knew deeply. A truth we still carry today. This was the coldest stretch of medieval life, the point where winter stopped feeling like a season and began behaving like a force pressing steadily against every weakness. When you step outside at dusk to bring in one last bundle of wood, you immediately sense how different the cold has become. It no longer sits gently on your skin the way it did a few weeks ago. Instead, it clings to you with a sharpness that seems to travel straight through your coat, wrapping itself around your ribs, as though it means to settle there for the night. The sky holds no color, just a broad, dim sheet of darkness that feels low enough to touch if you lifted your hand. Even the snow seems quieter, as if the world is holding its breath before something difficult. You hurry back inside, feeling as though the cold follows you to the door. The smell that greets you when you enter the cottage is faint. A thin broth warms in the pot, the kind of broth made not for satisfaction, but to stretch the last ingredients into something the body can still recognize as a meal. You lift the wooden spoon and stir gently. There is no thickness to it, no vegetables swirling at the surface, no scent of herbs, just warm liquid clinging to the edges of the bowl. When you serve it, no one comments. They know the stores are nearly gone. They know the earlier sacks of barley and peas have dwindled to a handful of crumbs at the bottom. They know the last root vegetables have lost their firmness and flavor weeks ago. You eat slowly, not because you want to savor it, but because you want your stomach to believe it has received something meaningful. And when the bowl is empty, the quiet that settles isn't disappointment, it's resignation. A shared understanding that tomorrow's portion will be smaller still. As the evening deepens, you notice sounds filtering in from outside. A cough deep and heavy travels down the frozen air. Then another, softer, from the opposite direction. The kind of cough that belongs to someone who has worked through too many cold mornings and eaten too many thin meals. Rooms like yours trap both warmth and moisture. Damp clothing hangs near the fire. Children sleep close to their parents, and breath lingers long in the air before disappearing. These conditions turn a simple chill into something more dangerous, especially for the young and the elderly. You hear someone knock on a neighbor's door, followed by low voices, worried ones. You don't need to see their faces to know what they're discussing. This is the point in winter when illness moves almost silently, touching house after house with the same slow, heavy certainty as falling snow. You place a small log on the fire and watch as the flame climbs reluctantly up its side. The wood is dry enough to burn, yet you can feel that every piece added to the hearth is one piece fewer in the stack outside. The fire gives warmth, but every ember reminds you there is a finite amount of fuel left to burn. For the first time in weeks, you notice the fire doesn't fill the room the same way. It lights the immediate space around it, but the shadows seem to hold their ground instead of retreating. The cold presses close to the floor, pooling in the corners, waiting to creep back when the last log is finished. And somewhere deep inside you sense the quiet, unspoken fear every medieval family carried. not of the fire itself, but of the moment the fire can no longer be fed. Later, you open the door again to shake out the cooking pot. The air that hits you feels sharper than it did earlier. Your breath turns solid in an instant, floating away like tiny crystals carried off by the wind. The ground beneath your feet is coated in a thin layer of ice that hides every dip and stone. You have to plant each step with care, feeling the surface before trusting it with your weight. A few weeks ago, you would have walked this same path without thinking. Now, even a short walk feels like an unnecessary risk, a chance to slip, to twist an ankle, to be caught outside longer than your body can endure. You glance down the road toward the darker part of the village, where the path blends into the fields. The world looks unfamiliar, strange in its silence, and you instantly understand why most travelers stayed home during this season. Cold does not strike quickly. It waits, it drains, it persuades. So you step inside again, closing the door with a care that feels almost instinctive. You return to the warmest place in the room, a few feet from the fire, and sit with your hands open toward the heat, feeling the small pulse of warmth meet your fingers. There is no panic in the cottage, no loud fear, just a slow, collective understanding that the hardest nights of winter have begun. The hunger, the sickness, the brittle cold, the limited wood, none of these things are dramatic by themselves, but together they press on the body and on the spirit with a closeness that feels deeper each night. And yet, you breathe. You shift your shoulders beneath the blanket. You stretch your feet nearer to the fire. You settle your mind into a quiet rhythm. This is how medieval people made it through nights like this. Not by rushing, not by fighting, but by allowing the hours to pass one slow breath at a time. As the fire settles into a low, steady glow and the night gathers its strength outside the door, another layer of winter's hardship unfolds. Let's move gently into what followed when the season tightened even further. The night grows heavier as the hours stretch forward, and the fire in your cottage sinks lower into the hearth, settling into a dim red pool of light that barely reaches your knees. The warmth is still there, but it feels different now, not as a comforting presence, but as something you must guard carefully, like a fragile animal that might slip away if neglected for even a moment. Outside, the wind has calmed, yet the world remains painfully still, the kind of stillness only deep cold can create. The air no longer moves. It simply hangs, thick and unmoving, as though the entire village has been wrapped in a sheet of frost. This is the time of winter medieval families feared most, not because it was loud or violent, but because it could feel strangely quiet, as if the world were slowing down in ways that made you uneasy. By now, the idea of a full meal feels like a distant memory. The hunger you felt earlier in the season, the kind that made you think often of bread or meat, has shifted into something more muted and more worrying. It is not sharp anymore. It is not a pang or a cramp. It is a weakness that settles into your arms and legs, a heaviness that makes even simple movements feel deliberate and slow. You rise from the floor more carefully. You walk with shorter steps. You sit with your back bent forward, as if conserving energy without realizing it. In the storage corner of the room, the shelves look painfully bare, holding only small pieces of dried food that you once would have considered scraps, ends of roots, broken grains, bits of herbs that lost their scent weeks ago. But now they are treated with quiet reverence, the way one might handle something sacred. Everyone eats slower these days, not from fear, but from the sheer need to make time pass between each empty meal. No one speaks of hunger. There is nothing to say that hasn't already been felt. You hear movement from the cottage across the narrow path, a soft groan, followed by the muffled sound of a stool being dragged across the floor. You can picture one of your neighbors sitting up slowly, wrapped in layer after layer of blankets, trying to ease the pressure in their chest long enough to catch a full breath. In winter, breathing itself becomes difficult. The cold air outside stiffens the lungs. The smoke from indoor fires irritates throats already weakened by hunger. The dampness inside cottages lingers on clothing and bedding, making recovery slow and uncertain. Someone coughs again outside, a long, low sound followed by several shorter ones. You pause in place, listening not out of fear, but from instinct. You are waiting to hear whether the cough ends in a breath or in silence. Winter illnesses rarely came all at once. They crept quietly through the village, moving from home to home like a chill under the door. And once they settled, it could take weeks before a household felt strong again. You find yourself breathing slower, as if matching the rhythm of the fire. Each inhale feels precious. Each exhale feels deliberate. Keeping the hearth alive has become a challenge in itself. You can no longer feed it generously the way you did in early winter. Now the logs are rationed with care, placed one at a time, angled carefully, so they catch flame with the least amount of waste. The flames rise but cautiously, almost timidly. They flicker along the grain of the wood and glow for a moment before shrinking again, as though unsure they have permission to burn brightly. You watch them closely, because the fire's behavior is one of the few signals you have about the room's safety. If the flames drop too low, cold air will creep in from the cracks in the walls. If they rise too suddenly, a spark could leap onto the dry rushes scattered across the floor. Either way, danger sits very close to comfort. The fire is no longer just a source of heat. It is a living presence you must manage, encourage, and occasionally sacrifice sleep to protect. When you open the door briefly to throw out cooled ash, the cold reaches in with such force that it makes your breath catch. You step out only a little, keeping one hand on the doorframe, because you know that the ground has changed again. The packed snow from earlier in the season has turned into uneven slabs of ice, layered over soft pockets of frozen soil. Each step could tip you forward. Each shift of weight could make the world slide beneath your boots. Travel now is almost out of the question. Not just journeys to distant places, even crossing the village has become something people discuss quietly before attempting. They ask whether it is necessary should someone stronger go, or whether waiting for morning light is safer. The cold itself is not the threat. It is how quickly it drains strength, how silently it numbs fingers, how easily it convinces someone to stop for a moment of rest that might accidentally stretch into the last rest they ever take. You slip back inside with a long, controlled breath, grateful to close the door on a world that feels unforgiving tonight. You settle again on your blanket, the fire warming only the space nearest your hands. You wrap your arms around your chest, not out of fear but out of instinct, the instinct to protect your own warmth the way one protects a fragile flame. The quiet fills the room, not a peaceful quiet nor a tense one, just a quiet that reflects the exhaustion of a season that has gone on for too long. You feel the strain in your shoulders, the heaviness in your eyelids, and the dull ache in your limbs. These sensations are not alarming. They are familiar companions at this point in the winter. This is the stage medieval people recognized as the true test, a test not of strength, but of endurance. Not of bravery, but of patience. Not of dramatic heroism, but of steady persistence through each passing night. You breathe out slowly, letting the air warm your hands before it disappears. This night, like so many before it, must simply be lived through. And you do that in the oldest, simplest way, by staying near the fire, by conserving strength, and by believing, quietly, that morning will still come. As the flame settles into its slow, steady rhythm and the cold waits on the other side of the wall, the final and harshest edge of winter opens before you. Let's drift into the next chapter of this long season. The night has grown colder since you last looked toward the door. You feel it settling into the walls, not sharply, not suddenly, but with a slow firmness that suggests the temperature outside has dropped even lower. The air inside the cottage feels thinner too, the kind of thinness that comes when people breathe carefully, conserving energy without even thinking about it. You shift slightly on your blanket, listening to the faint crackle of the fire and the soft rustling of the straw beneath you. Even these sounds feel quieter tonight, as if they're trying not to disturb the weight of the cold pressing against the world. This is the hour when accidents happen most easily, not because people are careless, but because winter wears down even the strongest bodies. You feel the sensation in your arms first, a dull heaviness that makes simple movements feel slow, as if your muscles are wrapped in thick cloth. When you reach for a log to place on the fire, your hand hesitates for a moment, not from fear, but from the small effort required to lift it. Your legs respond the same way when you shift your weight. It's not pain exactly, but a quiet fatigue that settles deep inside the bones, the kind of tiredness that comes after weeks of thin meals and the constant work of keeping warm. You understand, without needing to think about it, that winter accidents in villages like this were often caused by nothing more than exhaustion. A stumble near the hearth, a slip on the ice outside, a careless moment while carrying water, a misstep with a tool made heavy by tired hands. The cold doesn't create danger. It amplifies every small weakness already present. You tuck your hands back under your cloak and breathe slowly until the heaviness eases a little. The fire pops gently, sending a tiny shower of sparks upward. You watch them fade into the air, each one disappearing before it reaches the beams above. Somewhere down the lane, a door opens, then closes again. A soft footstep, a murmur of voices. People move more quietly during this stage of winter, not out of secrecy, but out of understanding. Everyone knows that some households are struggling. Illness has settled into certain homes and refuses to leave, and every cottage will greet the spring with the same number of people it held in autumn. There are no cries or dramatic moments tonight, just a stillness that carries its own message. A winter this deep takes things slowly, quietly. One person grows weaker, another runs out of strength, someone else does not wake as easily as the night before, and the village absorbs these losses with the same patience it uses to absorb storms, not with indifference, but with a quiet respect for how fragile life becomes when warmth and food are scarce. You lower your head slightly, not in grief but in acknowledgement, a recognition of the long line of winters that shaped the rhythm of these lives. You add one more small piece of wood to the hearth, guiding it carefully, so it doesn't shift too suddenly. The flame takes a moment before accepting it, crawling slowly across the dry surface until a thin ribbon of yellow light curls upward. You lean closer, feeling the warmth return to your fingers, and you're reminded of how essential this glow is now. It doesn't need to fill the room. It only needs to keep the cold from reaching the center of it. When the fire burns like this, steady but faint, it becomes something more than heat. It becomes a boundary between your body and the vast, freezing world outside the walls. You watch the flame climb and fall in slow waves, and your breathing falls into the same rhythm, long and even. The fire feels alive in the most fragile way. It asks nothing from you except attention, care, and patience, the very same qualities winter demands from every person living through it. You sense, without needing to open the door again, that the village has frozen into a kind of still picture, that every tree branch, every fence post, every rooftop has taken on a thin, shimmering layer of frost. Travelers who once trusted their own strength now wait indoors, postponing any journey that isn't essential. Animals huddle in shelters, moving only enough to share warmth. The paths that led easily from home to home have tightened into icy ribbons where only the bravest would walk. You imagine the fields stretching beyond the houses, silent, unmoving, with the snow lying flat, like a lid on the earth. Nothing grows, stirs, or gives, and yet the land endures, holding its breath until the sun returns strong enough to wake it. You lower your eyes, understanding that the world is resting in a way that is both peaceful and intimidating. You rest your back against the wall, feeling the cold of the stone seep through your cloak in a slow, steady creep. Your hands warm near the fire, your legs curl beneath you. Your breathing settles into a calm, unhurried rhythm. Outside, the wind begins to rise again, not fiercely, just enough to remind you that the season is not finished with you yet. But inside, there is a quiet determination growing, not loud, the kind of strength that builds when you accept the reality of winter while still believing in the presence of spring somewhere ahead. This is how medieval people survived this darkest stretch, not through dramatic acts of will, but through slow, deliberate choices that kept them moving carefully from one night into the next. You close your eyes for a moment, letting the warmth of the fire settle into your skin, and you hold on to the small truth that has guided generations. If you can make it through the night, the morning might hold something gentler. As the last embers breathe quietly against the dark and another winter night inches toward dawn, the story shifts once more. Let's move softly into the final days before the first return of warmth. The embers settle into a reddish glow, casting a soft, wavering warmth that reaches only a small circle around the hearth. Beyond it, the room hangs in gentler darkness, the kind that feels thick enough to touch. You sit very still, listening to the hush that comes over a village after midnight, that deep quiet where every sound seems meaningful. The wind shifts against the shutters, giving the illusion of movement outside, even when everything is frozen in place. In moments like this, you understand how winter shapes the mind as much as it shapes the world. Nothing loud happens. It is the stillness that does the work. And that stillness comes with a weight that is hard to describe, a sense that every household is carrying its own quiet burden, each family performing its private calculation of what remains in the storehouse, what must be rationed, and what risks can no longer be afforded. You feel the heaviness that settles across your shoulders, not dramatic, not sudden, but steady. A reminder that weeks of thin meals and sleepless nights have accumulated in the body. This is the type of tiredness that doesn't announce itself with pain. It shows up in slower thoughts, and hands that hesitate before lifting something, and footsteps that pause just a little too long before moving again. The people of medieval Europe lived in this state through the final stretch of winter. Even the healthiest adults walked through these days with a quiet fatigue that curled into their bones. Every task took slightly more effort. Every decision carried slightly more weight. When strength fades gradually, it becomes difficult to notice the point where difficulty turns into danger. A short walk to fetch water becomes a test of balance. A trip to gather wood becomes a moment where a misstep could lead to injury. Even the act of stepping outside can become a negotiation with the cold. You breathe in slowly, recognizing the immense patience required to survive these final weeks. The patience to move slowly, to conserve energy, and to wait without forcing the world to hurry toward spring. A faint cough echoes outside, carried through the night by the wind. You cannot tell where it came from, but you can tell it belongs to someone who has been fighting sickness for several days. This time of year is unforgiving to anyone who falls ill. The cold compresses symptoms, makes every breath harder, ache deeper, weakness more difficult to recover from. Illness here doesn't arrive like a storm. It drifts through homes like a shadow, circling those whose strength is already worn thin. A fever comes and goes. A child sleeps longer than usual. An elder grows quieter day by day. These changes happen slowly, so gently that only the closest family members can see the difference. People do what they can, warm cloths on the forehead, thin broth made from what little remains, whispered prayers at the bedside, but winter has a way of deciding outcomes on its own timetable. You breathe out softly, knowing that this part of the story has repeated across countless winters, across countless villages, across generations who learn to measure their hopes carefully until the season finally turns. You glance toward the door, imagining the roads that stretch out beyond the village. By now, most of them are impassable. Narrow tracks hardened into icy ridges, open fields swallowed by drifting snow, and river crossings sealed beneath fragile sheets of ice that cannot be trusted. Travelers in these months moved only when necessity forced their hand, a messenger carrying word of a birth or a death, a healer summoned urgently from a distant parish, a merchant attempting to reach a town before supplies ran out. Each journey came with its own risks, not only the cold, but the possibility of losing the path, or mistaking a frozen pond for solid ground, or finding the road blocked by snow that fell faster than expected. You can almost picture a lone figure moving slowly through the white landscape, guided only by the dim outline of trees and the memory of where the path should be beneath the snow. For anyone caught between villages after sunset, the danger multiplied tenfold. Night erased familiar landmarks, turned shadows into obstacles, and chilled breath into frost before it left the lips. Winter demanded respect from those who traveled through it. It demanded caution, it demanded humility, and above all, it demanded an understanding that survival depended not on boldness, but on restraint. You feel the air in the room still further, as if even the fire is waiting for something. This is the stage of winter when everything grows quiet, not peaceful, not calm, but suspended. People move more carefully. They speak less. Listen for signs that the cold might be shifting, the days might be lengthening, thaw might be preparing to rise beneath the frozen soil. You sense that the entire village is waiting in the same way you are, patience mixed with fatigue, hope mixed with caution. Somewhere in the dark outside, a rooster gives a confused call, uncertain of whether the hour marks a dawn or merely another shade of night. Its voice echoes across the empty fields, a reminder that even the natural world feels the strain of winter's final weeks. You breathe deeply, closing your eyes for a moment. The fire continues its soft whisper, and the wind outside shifts again, no longer sharp, but no warmer either. This is winter at its most demanding, not violent, overwhelming, but persistent, testing resolve through slow erosion rather than sudden force. And yet, even in this deep exhaustion, a change is approaching, so slight at first that most people don't notice it, but real enough to stir the air and soften the edges of the cold. That change will carry us gently into the next part of our journey. The first signs that winter's long shadow is finally beginning to lift. You let your breath settle as the last echoes of winter fade in your mind, almost like snow melting into the soft earth. For a long moment, you simply sit with the weight of everything you've heard. The hunger, the cold, the danger, the quiet acts of kindness, all of it drifting around you like the final embers of an old story. And as you rest here in this quiet space between their world and yours, you begin to notice a gentle thought rising to the surface, almost like a whisper. You realize that the people who lived through those winters weren't symbols or distant figures in dusty books. They were human. They longed for warmth the way you do. They hoped for better days the way you do. They felt fear, exhaustion, relief, gratitude, and the deep comfort of someone offering a helping hand. And somehow, despite everything stacked against them, they kept moving forward. It's humbling, it's grounding, and it changes the way you see your own life, even if only in a small, quiet way. Because when you think about it, winter, in their world, wasn't just a season, it was a test, a long, unforgiving measure of endurance and faith. And still, they met it with a steadiness that feels almost unbelievable from the softness of modern life. They faced cold that seeped into the bones, hunger that gnawed for weeks, sickness that had no cure, and a darkness that stretched across the land like a living thing. And yet, they found ways to laugh, to share, to pray, to hope, and to carry one another through. It's a reminder that the same resilience that lived in them still lives in you. Maybe it is quieter now, softened by heated rooms and warm meals and thick blankets, but it hasn't disappeared. It's there, waiting inside you, steady and real. And sometimes it only takes a story like theirs to make you feel it again. Tonight you wandered through the frozen lanes of medieval villages, felt the stillness of smoke-filled cottages, listened to the hush of hunger and illness, and saw the quiet bravery of people who shared their last scraps with a neighbor. You traveled through the worst nights of famine, heard the whispers of prayers rising from dimly lit churches, and watched the first pale light of spring break through landscapes that had seemed lost to winter. From icy rivers to creaking barns, from plague-stricken households to the blessed return of Plough Monday, you witnessed how ordinary people held on to life with a strength that moved generation after generation forward. Now, as the story settles and your breath softens, you can let the old world drift gently away. Picture the cold fading, fields thawing, snow easing into soft earth, and the first green shoots pushing through, quiet and determined. Let yourself imagine a warm hearth somewhere in that distant time, glowing softly. The kind of glow that says you've made it through the worst of it. Rest now. Let that warmth be the final thing you carry from tonight's journey. If this peaceful walk through the past brought you a bit of comfort or helped your mind slow down, I'd love for you to like this video and subscribe so you don't miss our next quiet adventure. This little corner of history is always here for you, a place to settle your thoughts and breathe a little easier. So for now, let your body sink into whatever holds you. Feel the weight of the blanket, the softness of the pillow, the slow, steady rhythm of your breath. There's nothing left to do tonight. No battles to fight, no cold winds to endure. Only rest. Sleep softly, dear traveler of the night. May the past be gentle in your dreams. And until we meet again in another quiet story, good night.